start grounding in your achievements. So let's start, what are your achievements and what have you
Mhm.
done? That was great. And even little things too are still important. So, and a lot of times when we're in the spirals of self-doubt, we tend to delete or downplay the achievements.
Thanks for reaching out to be on it. And I started looking into you a little bit, and I'm happy to get a chance to chat with you. But for people that don't know, maybe like give yourself like a bit of an introduction of who you are and what you currently do.
Sure. Well, I just want to thank you for having me on.
Of
That's
course.
first off. And so a little bit about me. I work with actors. I'm a talent agent in New York. So that's my primary occupation. I work as a representative for film, TV, theater, commercial, print, and voiceover. So my job is to really find them work and employment, and
Love
that's
it.
what I do on a day-to-day basis. And I also have a background in psychology and coaching, so I have a PhD in psychology, and I've also been a psychology professor for 22 years. I still teach part time, and and I enjoy what I do in a sense. So that's sort of like what I do, and then the need for kind of like the coaching and the performance mindset coaching. When I first started my agency, several years ago, the one theme that kept running up with actors was self sabotage and self doubt, and them, really, really being their own worst enemy. That's what kept coming up.
Mm. So did you find like sorry, did the talent agency come before like being in a psychologist, or was that at the same time? Did one come before the other?
The psychology came first because that's what I majored in psychology,
Okay.
received my master's degree, and then I started kind of working with actors, both because there was also a part of me that was interested in performing too. So I was in a drama club in high school. In college, I took some acting classes and some theater classes, and I kind of enjoyed it. Not necessarily enough for a career, but I definitely enjoyed being around creative people, theater people. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is it's so interesting being around like creative people and seeing someone who can create like such a great piece of work, but then talking to them and you see this imposter syndrome or this self-sabotage often come up. And with a lot of I think famous people it tends to be either drugs or it's like sex. It's one of these things that they like over it's overindulgence I find is what we see sort of in the public eye is how they're maybe escaping from not really feeling like attached to do you think
Mhm.
that I don't want to call it a phenomenon, but do you think that imposter syndrome sort of arises because it is a very unusual thing for humans in general to be doing, like to be in a film and you have millions of fans, or even in a small film and you have all these people around you and you're the star of this short film. It is very unusual. I don't think when we were in tribes as hunter gatherers that we were used to this type of attention, so it does a number on the brain for sure.
Yeah, and then when you don't have it, because it's like a cycle of the art is like 1 minute you could be attached to a project, and the next minute you're back out of work again, and the it's a really tough business to be in. It's
Hmm.
exciting, and it's definitely fulfilling, but it's not without its challenges. That there's a lot of challenges that come up with being a performer, being an actor.
Yeah.
It's an oversaturated market.
Now, not to, I don't want you to give away too many of your secrets because you do coaching and whatnot, but what is something, is there a method to help ground someone when they're having a bit of that imposter syndrome or starting to self-sabotage?
Well, the important thing is to really, I think the first step is to work with the imposter syndrome because with self sabotage, it's a really sneaky thing to work with because most people don't even realize they're doing it.
Mm,
It's not like a something that we know consciously what we're
right.
doing. So it could be like if you start really kind of like downplaying your achievements as the first step. Because most of the time, with an actor, you're dealing with a lot of no's because it's an oversaturated market. And then, of course, you have well-intentioned family and friends who are not in the business or don't understand the business.
Right.
Yeah, let's say they go to
The amount of
Thanksgiving.
times
Oh,
I've had family be like, "You should just be on SNL." You're like,
yeah,
"Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll just go do
yeah, it's
that."
that easy. Yeah, no, I'll get right on it.
Yeah,
Or
yeah, yeah.
or they'll go to holiday dinners with their and everyone's so you're an actor. What have you been in that I would know?
Right.
And the short film, they may have done some short films, but let's face it, most of the time, no one is going to really see that unless you show it to them.
Right.
They're not. So there's that. Well, you're an actor. You've been doing this for 6 months. Why haven't you been in a movie? Or my favorite is when I do land an agent. Why can't your agent is called Steven Spielberg or Spike Lee? I'm like, it's like we have they think we have these numbers on speed dial. So
Yeah,
they'd be
like
like, okay,
once you decide to be an agent, you have all these numbers available to you. Yeah.
yeah, it don't work that way like it does in the movie.
Yeah.
So I think that alone has a lot to do with it. So the one step to answer kind of your question would be to start grounding in your achievements. So let's start, what are your achievements and what have you
Mhm.
done? That was great. And even little things too are still important. So, and a lot of times when we're in the spirals of self-doubt, we tend to delete or downplay the achievements. Oh,
Totally.
you booked the role, and you're an actor sometimes like, yeah, it's because they wanted to give me the part, or no one else is really trying out for it. Rather than taking credit for, no, you were talented enough to book the role.
Yeah. Yeah, I think honestly, like one of the biggest things that helped me with imposter syndrome was having friends that knew you before any of that. There's something to be said about like going back to like if especially with Facebook and all these social media methods that you can reach out to people and find people that you grew up around or you went to college with or you went to high school with and maybe even not even necessarily hanging out every weekend, but rekindle some of those relationships, I think, of people that knew you before you started this endeavor, because they can really ground you in like watching that growth. They've seen you from this like younger state. Like I have a friend and we've been friends since we were 10 years old. So he's seen me through every like 2 decades of different like parts of my life. And I'll do that sometimes. I'll downplay, like, yeah, I haven't really booked anything. I'm not really doing anything lately. And he's like, shut up. He's like, he goes, when I tell people about you, I say he did this, he worked with this person, then he did this, then he did a hip hop album. And I go, oh yeah, I guess because
Yeah,
the life of an artist is always about like, I think the life of a good artist is always about keeping the bar just out of reach so that you're always trying to improve yourself, because the worst thing that you can do is be like, well, I've got it all figured out and I'm the greatest actor in the world and I don't need to take any acting lessons because I'm great. But book me next to Clooney, I'll be fine, you know? And
yeah,
it's just not like that. Like you need to look back on your older stuff and be like, ugh, like I can be better than I was then and see that growth. That's the other thing too, is recording yourself. If you don't have
yeah,
close friends, record yourself. I do stand-up comedy, so I can watch, a video of me in 2014 and then a video of me in 2024 and be like, oh, I've improved greatly. But I today don't feel that improvement because
right.
you're always just at the top of whatever it is that you're doing.
And you can always be our own worst critic because most of the
Yeah.
time when people watch themselves, they start like, I don't like my voice, I don't like the way I sound, I don't like the way I
Yeah.
sound so
Which I
bad.
like, focus on the material. Don't focus on
Yeah,
what you look like. Don't focus on any of that stuff.
what
Yeah.
you sound like, all of that. Just
Yeah.
what did you say and how did you say it, and then
Yeah.
that'll because again, the one thing that I think is important, as you said, and you laid it out great, is by being humble in a sense, but humility and having that ability to always be learning and always be, trying to be better than you were last time, and each time you do better. Because the one thing I noticed, there are some actors, believe it or not, I know you were joking about that, where they have that mentality. Where I have all the training I need.
I believe it.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, and I gently but firmly almost want to say, and when was the last time you worked?
Yep. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I
And
know they
how
were
many
huge
gigs did you
network.
book this year?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You know, and I remember one time I was at a networking event, and this older actor, who must have been in his 60s and very arrogant. I'm going to say it nicely. I was like, so and I said, so where are you training at? And he just like goes, I have all the training I need. I'm like, okay. So what have you done? And he just started rattling something's off. I'm like, so what role were you? Well, I didn't have lines. It was so you were background.
I was an extra in The Sopranos.
Yeah, I was an extra
Yeah.
in this. I worked on,
Yeah,
was a
yeah.
stand-in for this person. I'm like, in my head, I'm like, that's not acting.
Oh,
Um, Anybody can be an extra. Anybody can be a stand-in.
yeah.
It, Not everyone can deliver a line or a couple of lines to camera and be on cue and all that. So, and I kind of like say that that's even a form of self-sabotage when you have that mindset of I can't, I'm good enough already. No,
Hmm.
you're not. That's not possible. Because even the A-list actors will have coaches with them on set that
Yeah.
are challenging them to do better and to expand their skill set.
Or a mindset coach even of some kind. Like I know
Oh yeah,
Will Smith would have Jim Quick on set with him to just get him in a mindset of a character. Like
yeah,
Jenna Ortega is a perfect example of she's filming the next season of Wednesday, and they want the character to be able to play the cello, fence, do all the. She took classes to learn how to do these things so that it was believable when she did it, so that somebody at
yeah.
home who plays the cello wasn't like, they're phoning that in. She wanted it to be believable, and that's what makes people like great is they take it very seriously.
Yeah, and they take it very seriously and they really commit to it.
Hmm.
I know even when The Sopranos was on, the main actor James Gandolfini had a dialect coach with him that to learn to work with the nuances of that Jersey
Right.
slang that that his character had. Um, because he wanted to be authentic. He didn't want to be playing, someone that looks like you're playing an accent because you can tell like very often even with accents like you get someone who's from the land they can tell automatically that that's phony
Right.
because I remember about 7 or 8 years ago Marvel came out with Luke Cage the second season and there was a lot of they did a storyline where a lot of the villains were from Jamaica. That was a storyline. And
Such a
so
random storyline.
it is a random storyline with the
Is
right
that
name, but
canon or they just add that in?
I don't know how they came up with it, but they said most of the villains are gonna be from Jamaica, like a
Okay.
Jamaican tribe.
All right.
The one thing is they I guess because they really couldn't find that many authentically Jamaican actors,
Right.
so they hired like black actors to play Jamaican, and it flopped because a lot of people were coming out and trashing it that were from Jamaica. So nobody talks like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I believe that. I mean, I wouldn't have known that because I'm not from Jamaica, but
I lived in Toronto
people.
long enough to know that the Jamaican accent, they call it the Toronto man's accent, but it's essentially like the Jamaican way of speaking. I can't remember the exact patois, something I can't remember, but someone's gonna kill me over this. But they mixed it in with like modern African American vernacular English, and it's sort of this mix meld of way of speaking. And it's like I could imagine like what they think when they hear Jamaican is probably Bob Marley. They don't think of all of like the nuances and different ways of saying things that like someone from Jamaica would just instinctively know. I mean, they could have even got someone from like Trinidad, and they probably would have been able to jump right in and know,
Yeah,
But that's
but
that's
they
crazy.
hired American actors to play Jamaican, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, it didn't work for them. It was like that was the biggest critics they saw. Was like, okay, these really fake Jamaicans,
Mhm.
and I'm like, okay, that's probably not what you were going for. But even like props like smoking, like if you're gonna play like a smoker on TV or at least you should know how people smoke because otherwise it's it's you could tell automatically. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Ruins it like that too.
yeah.
What do you this is a little off topic, but sort of on topic. I just because it came to mind for me. What do you think about AI in film being used in film? And do you think that we're gonna get to a point where, like the guy that does all of the like NCIS, for example, or Law and Order. There's like a million of these shows, right? Like NCIS Chicago, NCIS Miami, NCIS. It's
Mhm.
just franchised out the wazoo. There's not really a storyline. It's just a new kind of thing up every. Do you think that we'll get to a point where there'll be a creator who's like, why am I hiring all these actors who are complaining about the set conditions and they're not making enough money and they don't want to train and the Jamaicans we pulled in, they're not real Jamaicans and they're not doing the right accents when someone could just pay like 10 coders to sit there and just AI prompt an entire season of this show in an hour, pay those
Um,
people and then they're done.
it can happen, but I think we're uh, a long way from that. Um, because number one, you're not going to get the true dimensions of a human experience. Because even if you look at a lot of the AI generated videos, there's still a lot of stuff missing
Mm-hmm.
from it.
There's like a soul missing almost.
Exactly. So you're
Yeah.
not going to get that. And also, you're going to need someone to write. You're going to also need someone to be able to convey emotion, not just superficially.
Right.
The one thing I've noticed right now, AI is not good at is creativity
Which thank God.
or storytelling. Thankfully, yes. No, that
And
exactly.
should not. That should be the last thing. Like I
Yeah.
love it. Like it's kind of cool, like seeing some stuff, but then part of me goes, why are we doing this? Like, can we not focus all of the attention on, gee, I don't know, spotting cancer quicker, or getting me a cheaper flight, or finding me the best hotel in this city. Like those are things that AI should be focused on,
Yeah,
not
especially the
taking
medical
away.
person.
Like,
Well, the only thing that does concern me is the background actors that you can
right.
now start CGIing,
Because
crowd safing.
they already sort of were doing that, right? They would
Yeah.
duplicate, they would test film like an audience, and then they would sort of just duplicate those people using
Yeah.
CGI or something.
And that's going to be I think an issue that can come up because that's going to it's a lot cheaper that way to get someone to do CGI one or two people than
Yeah.
paying several hundred people to be background. Also, what concerns me is the voice cloning, like for voiceover, and because now most AI tools that are really cheap can clone your voice for 2 minutes. Now,
Yeah.
um, okay, I can understand if you're doing it as an individual creator, cloning your voice, but then we're going to start cloning other people's voices without their consent and start creating these animated cartoons and
It's gonna get real messy.
how do you protect that? And also with copyright, how do you so those are issues that the one thing that we need to do. I think it's great that AI is developing at lightning speed, but at the same time, we're going to also need a little bit of guardrails or at least some sort of protections.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, hopefully, like, given the fact that there were strikes when they were talking about like using AI in writing rooms or whatever, I feel like there's enough pushback from the creatives. But again, like I hate to say it, but all it takes is a really good AI and then the right amount of creatives that are just too tired to put up a fight. And then it's once they let it through once or twice, like there was a Netflix show where they did all of the VFX in one of the scenes was done with AI, and
Mhm.
the only reason people knew is because they were transparent with that. But like how many people are going to be transparent with that, and should there be laws put in place where it's like you have to be? The scariest one that I'm seeing separate from acting is I'm looking for apartments right now, and I keep seeing images that are clearly AI, and that is terrifying to me. Because if you're some realtor and you don't want to pay a photographer and you don't want to pay, a stager to come in and stage an apartment, they're just going to take a picture of a dirty room and say, clean this up and make it look like a nice living room. And then ChatGPT is going to blow over it and now you have this AI image, and it is the room, but it's not the room, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, of course.
Like you can tell, like something's a little off.
Yeah, because there's a lot of things like even like the simple shadow effects of like, well, this doesn't look that genuine. The color's slightly off. But then, the solution would be, okay, no, you should see the apartment or place before you buy it
Sure, yeah, yeah,
in person. Take a trip out if you have to before you invest several, thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars in a place. You should check it out.
yeah,
And then I would assume then if they used AI that would get quickly discredited because
yeah.
people will then be posting online, don't buy from this
Don't buy
person. Or,
this. Because the other thing too is scammers just using it as a bait and switch, like it's not even a real place. It's something they pulled from Google and they're just taking your money or whatever. So
yeah.
you have to be definitely on top of that. I wanted to ask you about the hypnosis audio collections that you have on your website. Can you tell me a little bit more about like where that idea came from? Do you have any stories of people that you've worked with that use this? Because when I was trying to quit smoking, I considered using hypnosis because people kept talking about it. Eventually, I found my own ways of
Hmm.
getting over it, but I do feel like there is some validity to it, and I do think that too often people compare it to like comedy show hypnosis where they think it's just
Yeah.
like a funny gag and they don't think that the brain can actually be put into this state because they've never had it done to them, right?
Right. And one thing I often say, even if you look at those shows, what you're seeing is sometimes mostly the people that volunteer are introverts,
Mm.
and the fact that they're able to be free up there, if you can remove their stage fright, which especially sometimes they'll have paralyzing stage fright, in 10 minutes, can you imagine what other limitations we could remove in an hour?
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing too. So the one thing about it, especially when it comes to addictions and stopping smoking, the first thing is working on the triggers. Very often, with uh, a craving comes a trigger. Whether it's
Hmm.
stress, whether it's excitement, whether it's anger, or even just security reasons, or just that habit. Because most smokers that I know, and I grew up with a family of smokers, and they would sometimes wake up and before their feet hit the floor, they had a cigarette. They were already lit up,
It's
and
crazy.
because it's a trigger thing. It's also
Yeah.
also a
Oh, I'm
hand to
awake.
mouth.
Gotta smoke.
Yeah, yeah, or it's even just a security blanket too.
The rationalization though from smokers is like the funniest thing in the world to me. Like sometimes like, oh, I need one. Do you need it though? Like
Well,
I would tell myself like the way that I stopped is anytime that I had the craving pop in my head, I'm stressed, right? Like something stressful happens and I think I want a cigarette. My next thought was always, that's a weird thing for a non-smoker to think. And then I just go about my day because I
well,
started identifying as a
that's
non-smoker.
and that's pretty much what you just said is how the secret with hypnosis and stuff, smoke. Because the one thing is we don't tell you like you're quitting or that you're cutting down. You'll hear like if you ever watch a hypnosis, you are a non-smoker. You are a non-smoker because that's if you identify like that. Why would you have a craving or why would you even want to have a cigarette? You're a
Right.
non-smoker,
Yeah.
and also a lot of times you'll hear people say, "Oh, I smoke because it relaxes me." It also relaxes you, deep breathing.
Yeah.
And that's what really is when you're taking, a puff of a cigarette. You have to deep breathe to do that.
Yeah.
So,
You're literally
why-
inhaling deeply and then exhaling.
yes,
Like
totally.
it's like you
So
could get that exact same rush from just breathing and it's free.
it's free and it's healthier for you.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So,
I love how I
no,
went
so
with the
I
money side. You could tell what my
well,
motivation was.
and not only that, but you did bring up a good point, money too, because if you
Yeah.
think about it, it's not cheap,
No.
especially if you're smoking. Some people smoke upwards to 2 packs a day.
Yep.
And that's not cheap. That could be several hundred a month
Yep.
that you're that's costing you for cigarettes. So think of all the money you're going to save. And just being more, and having that relaxation and all of that from deep breathing properly.
Hmm.
So, so there's a lot of benefits that we would do, and we would have you kind of reflect that in a meditative state. And then, there is a bit of a scare tactic. Sometimes it's used like, okay, imagine yourself 10, 15 years in the future on your, you need oxygen, your grandparent kids are next to you, holding your hand. And most people snap out and say, I don't want that, I don't want that. Okay, then you're a non-smoker.
Yeah. Yeah, 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 true. I always think of Johnny Carson. I remember there was like a video of like Johnny Carson like walking around and he was like coughing and then he just kept saying those damn cigarettes. And I remember him saying that in this video and I was like, "What?" And then I found out that he died from like smoking.
Yeah.
It is what killed him. And so even in his like later years, he understood that like I just couldn't stay away from those goddamn cigarettes and that ended up being the thing that like took him, you
No,
know?
yeah.
And it's just like you said, it's one of those things where you just have to skip. Even exercising, I've heard people say things like, they're gonna hold a plank, and people are like, "Well, how can you hold a plank for like 3 minutes? Like that's crazy." And they're like, "Well, I just imagine that my whole family is being held hostage, and if I drop this plank, they're all dead." And that was like my buddy's way of staying in the plank. He's like,
Yeah.
I put myself mentally in this situation where if I had to, my family's life is at risk. Could I hold this plank for 3 minutes and then reap all of the positive rewards from that? It's a
Yeah.
more morbid way
And
of thinking, but I mean,
it,
what?
it is morbid, but at the same time, it just shows you the power of the brain
Oh,
and the power of the
totally.
human mind.
It's unbelievable, and I think we've only like scratched the surface. And I'm sure, like in psychology, you know way more than the average person. But like just even in my own life of trying to watch any negative self-talk about myself, or even just like complaining in general. Like it's fine to if somebody gives you like a terrible meal and you're like, this is garbage and I'm paying for this, I'm gonna get it, redone.
Hmm.
But then on the drive home, they go, can you believe the meal that was disgusting? I know they brought me out another one and it was fine after that, but oh my God, I'm never gonna go back there and I'm gonna call all my friends and I'm gonna go leave a nasty review. It's like, what a waste of your time. Like
Yeah.
we have
What?
only such a tiny little bit of time
Well,
here and you're
we're only here visiting
just
a brief
talking.
bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're just complaining. And it's like those people are exhausting to be around, also. Like, you don't want to be around someone that's just constantly complaining about their situation.
Hmm.
I'm always just like, do something about it then. That's literally where my mindset is always at. Like, do something. And as long as you did something about the thing that you're upset about, and let's say it still didn't go your way, at least you can live with, well, I tried. I tried to do something about it. It didn't work. I talked to the manager. He got me a new meal. We're done here.
Hmm.
Complaint over, move on with your life.
Yeah. 100%. Absolutely.
Trying to see. I have some other questions for you. Here's a good question for actors that might be listening to the show. Do you have like a piece of advice that would be like non-obvious for an actor? Like the obvious advice for an actor would be take classes, practice your craft, do independent films to get the reps in. But is there any advice that's like wouldn't necessarily be obvious to someone who's just starting out?
Well, I would definitely kind of say work on your mindset too, not just the technical side of things, but definitely work on your mindset. Also have some other outside hobbies, not just acting, because things that can kind of keep you grounded for when there are downtime between things. But I would definitely say work on your mindset because believe it or not, mindset is just as important as skill level. So you want to work on your mindset, and that's important. And I would even look at like people like Jim Quick and people like that, that can help you down the line, or Tony Robbins if you're into that, or Jim Rome. and
Hmm.
just really get into that more in a sense.
Yeah, I guess like podcasts too are super helpful like that. You could listen to the Johnny Rogers show and listen to all these
Of course.
awesome
Right.
creatives talk about pick and choose the guests that you want to listen to.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, the world is really at our fingertips, especially since podcasting came out. I mean, you have almost anything you
yeah.
want.
I have a theory that they say like 10,000 hours to become an expert at anything, but I think that rule was said before the wealth of the internet really came out. And I honestly do think that there are going to be now and in the future artists who are 2 years, 3 years into their craft that are as good as someone that's been doing it for 10 years because they have the wealth of the internet. They have all of this information on how to improve their acting. They have podcasts that they can listen to that's giving them advice that normally would take trial and error to figure out yourself. Do you see that at all with any of your younger actors? Like, was there a younger actor that sort of like really impressed you where you're like, not necessarily a gift, but they do seem like they have, a good head on their shoulders or they're headed in the right direction?
Well, I think that the most thing is just the most resilient actors are the ones that are gonna be there. Because again, it's all about just having that solid head on your shoulder in a sense and being strong and resilient. And I think the some of the tricks with that is when you go to an audition, I wouldn't even frame it as an audition. I would use it as a way to showcase your work. You have 2 minutes to showcase your performance and use that.
Right.
And
That,
instead of saying the word audition, because it can be triggering for some people to hear that, because it's like
mhm.
I'm being judged. I've got to perform, and then you start getting in your head, and you start second guessing yourself. And that's a lot of times when I see actors performing, especially whether it's class or sometimes even observing auditions. The one thing I've noticed is that they're in their head too much, and you can tell that in their performance because
Yeah.
they're so focused on what am I going to like. If they're doing a scene, a lot of times you can tell when an actor is nervous because they're so contemplating what they're about to say next that they're not really listening to their scene partner or reacting to their scene partner,
Right.
and that's going to cut the quality of the scene down.
Yeah, they're not actually in the moment. They're hearing what they're
Right.
saying, but they're mostly hearing what they're saying so they know when to say what they need to say.
Exactly. And they're
Yeah,
not
yeah.
hearing the subtext, what's
Right.
in between that.
Right. And having the proper facial reactions and all that
Yeah.
stuff too. Yeah.
And a
Um,
lot of veteran actors say that successful acting is not just delivering your lines, you're also reacting too.
Oh, big time. Yeah, yeah, for sure. When I asked you about the one word for the podcast, it's sort of the theme that we have for the show. Did a word come to mind for you?
I think just possibilities came in.
Possibilities?
Yes.
And why did the word possibilities come to mind for you?
Because anything is really possible if you put your mind to it and you're dedicated to accomplish it.
Yeah.
Um, if you really want something, you'll find a way to do it. And even if you have to find an indirect pathway to get there.
Yeah. No, that's true. There are the odd times where I feel like if you feel like you're forcing something in one direction and you're getting a lot of pushback, it's not that there's no possibility of that happening. It's almost like you have to reframe your approach or go about it a different way.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, and that's the way
Yeah.
to do it. It's just there's different ways of doing things, and that's even the sign of being a true creative. It's like okay, they may not be always a linear path to everything. You don't just have to do it one way.
Yeah, totally. What do you think this sort of fear of success is among like creatives? I know you've dealt with that a lot before in the sort of mental
Yeah.
scripts.
Well, fear of success is really rooted in fear of change and fear of more pressure added onto you. Um, or just, there could be change in relationships, there could be change in so many other things that
Yeah,
can
I
truly
guess
change.
I guess people too, when they hear success, they just think like more responsibility.
Yeah,
And so they're kind of like, well, I'm pretty happy with my situation now, and maybe that's where the self-sabotage starts coming in. Because if I
right.
go to the next level, I don't know how I'm gonna handle that.
And well, it's staying comfortable too. It's like
Right,
you're stuck in your comfort zone, and most of us are addicted to comfort. We want to do the most. We definitely want to succeed, but we don't want to do the stuff that might make us a little uncomfortable to get
right,
there. And that's why you hear a lot of stories of successful people or people that really made it, but they've also put a lot on the line. They also took a lot of risks that could have went the
right.
other way. And most of the time, we're not willing to do that because fear, we just want to stay comfortable, and that's a form of self sabotage too. Because you see these people who want to have success, but they're not doing anything to get that success.
Hmm. Yeah, true. You do hear often a lot of times people talking about, when I get this, when I get that, but then they're not really putting they like a lot of actors when they first start out, they think that the phone is just gonna ring and it's gonna be
Oh
someone
yeah,
on the other end being like, "Congrats, you got it." What? I didn't even audition for anything. I just said I wanted to be an actor.
yeah. I mean, and that's what I tell my client, or even when I give seminars out before about like the reality of an agent. Even when you land an agent, you need to be extremely proactive because if you're going to sit around and wait for the phone to ring, you're going to be waiting a long time.
Yeah, you have to be independent in that regard.
Hmm.
And just know that you have like the support of an agency, which is always helpful for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Now Albert, there's one question that I always ask all my guests. And essentially the question is, what advice would you give to your younger self? But I always like adding a different context to it. I want you to think of you at 15 years old. So if you can remember where you were at 15, who was around you at that time, and the phone rings and it's you now on the other end, and you can give your younger self a piece of advice based on everything that you've lived in your life, what would you say to your younger self?
I would have to say mainly more of a tough love call, and I would say stop caring what people think of you and stop trying to impress people because that would have saved the amount of so much time and energy if I knew that piece of advice that I know now.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. And that's actually a response that I get quite a lot is
Yeah,
you don't really need to care what people think about you. Maybe just the
right.
people that love you care what they think.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'll share all your stuff here for people watching on YouTube. Is it Bramante?
Yes.
Okay. So
So
it's
Dr. Al Bramante right there. Um, I post a lot of short form video there. My link tree, excellent, because that
um,
has all my channels and my website, my book, and everything. And feel free to reach out to me. I'm always open to having a conversation.
yeah, definitely, man. I would love to have you back on and we can chat more, but it was a pleasure getting to know you and thanks for making the time. I'm glad that
Well,
we could finally make this work.
let's connect, and I really appreciate you bringing me on. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right, man. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. All
All
right,
right,
bye.
bye.